In the lively and bustling city of Everdale, where the streets hummed with life and the skyline sparkled with towering buildings, two girls named Emily and Claire had a bond that began during their days at the prestigious Royal Heights University. Royal Heights was a place of dreams and possibilities, known for its grand halls, beautiful gardens, and a shimmering lake where students often gathered to share stories and make memories. Emily and Claire became best friends in their first year. They were inseparable, sharing meals, late-night study sessions, and countless dreams for the future. But even in the bright world of Royal Heights University, life didn't treat them equally. Emily was the golden girl. Everything came easy for her. Professors adored her, she aced every exam, and she won scholarships without much effort. Wherever she went, people seemed drawn to her, and good things always happened to her. Claire, however, had to fight for every little bit of success. She worked harder than anyone else, pulling long hours in the library and giving her all, but she never received the same attention or rewards. She managed to achieve things, but her light always seemed dim compared to Emily's. Deep down, Claire loved her friend, but she couldn't shake the jealousy that gripped her heart. It was like a shadow whispering, "Why is Emily always so lucky?" Their friendship was tested when Emily started dating a charming and kind boy named Daniel. Daniel was handsome and full of life, and he fell deeply in love with Emily. Seeing them together made Claire's heart ache with envy. One day, she decided to try and win Daniel's attention. She dressed in her best outfit, styled her hair perfectly, and put on her most dazzling smile, hoping Daniel would notice her. But no matter how hard she tried, Daniel only had eyes for Emily. Claire felt embarrassed and angry, but she kept her failed attempt a secret from Emily. After graduating from Royal Heights University, Emily and Claire decided to live together in the heart of Everdale. Emily's luck followed her into their new life. She got a high-paying job at a famous company and was adored by everyone. Claire found work too, but it wasn't as glamorous or fulfilling. Every day, the envy inside her grew stronger as she watched Emily's life sparkle while hers felt dull in comparison. Then, something life-changing happened. Emily met a wealthy businessman named James. James was not only rich but also kind and generous. He treated Emily like royalty, showering her with love and planning a grand wedding. The whole city of Everdale buzzed with excitement, and Emily asked Claire to be her bridesmaid. Claire smiled and agreed, but in her heart, she was anything but happy. She couldn't stand the thought of Emily having everything she ever dreamed of. As the wedding day drew closer, Claire's jealousy twisted into something dark. One night, she wandered to a hidden shop in an old alley where a mysterious woman sold her a small potion. The woman warned Claire that the potion would make anyone who drank it go mad. Claire clutched the potion, her heart pounding with both fear and determination. The day of the wedding finally arrived. The city of Everdale was alive with music and celebration. The venue glittered with lights, and guests gathered in awe of the beautiful bride. Emily looked stunning, her wedding dress glowing under the chandeliers. Claire, dressed as the bridesmaid, stood beside her, her hand trembling as she held the potion hidden in her bouquet. She watched Emily laugh and shine, surrounded by love and joy. The envy inside her was like a storm, and just as she prepared to carry out her plan, Claire's heart pounded in her chest. The moment had come. Her fingers tightened around the small bottle hidden in her bouquet, and her mind raced with thoughts of what she was about to do. Why should Emily have everything? She told herself. Why should she always be the one everyone loves and celebrates? Emily turned to Claire, her eyes sparkling with happiness. "Thank you for being by my side today," Emily said, her voice full of love and gratitude. Her smile was genuine, and for a moment, Claire felt her resolve falter. Memories of their laughter, late-night talks, and dreams of the future flooded her mind. Emily had always treated her like a sister, never once realizing the storm of envy swirling in Claire's heart. Claire's hand shook as she uncapped the potion. But before she could do anything, Emily reached over and gently squeezed Claire's hand. "I don't know what I would do without you, Claire," Emily said. "You've always been my rock, and I'm so lucky to have you in my life." Claire's breath caught in her throat. The warmth in Emily's words made her feel small and cold inside. Was she really about to destroy her best friend's happiness? Her heart wavered, and tears pricked her eyes. But just as she began to question herself, a sudden, loud crash interrupted the moment. The doors to the wedding hall burst open, and a man stumbled in, looking panicked and disheveled. It was James's business partner, Robert. "There's been an accident," he shouted, his voice echoing through the hall. Guests gasped, and the room fell silent, everyone turning to look at Robert with wide eyes. James rushed over to his partner, worry etched across his face. "What happened?" he asked. Robert took a deep breath, trying to calm himself. "The company's headquarters caught fire this morning. Everything's gone. The police suspect foul play. We've lost everything." Emily's face paled, and she reached out to steady herself. James looked shocked and shaken, his world crashing down around him in an instant. The news spread like wildfire among the guests, and whispers filled the air. Claire stood frozen, the potion still in her hand. The chaos around her seemed to blur as she watched Emily's happiness shatter. This was not part of her plan. The joy and laughter in the room had turned into confusion and worry, and Emily's bright smile was gone, replaced with a look of fear. But then, something unexpected happened. Emily straightened, taking a deep breath. She looked at James and squeezed his hand. "We'll get through this together," she said softly. Her voice was steady, her love and loyalty shining even in the face of disaster. Claire's heart twisted. Here she was, holding a potion that could ruin Emily's mind, but fate had already thrown a storm at her friend. And yet Emily's strength and kindness remained. Tears slid down Claire's cheeks as she realized how much darkness had filled her own heart. The storm of envy inside her suddenly felt small and meaningless compared to the love and loyalty Emily had just shown. Claire made a decision. With shaking hands, she slipped the potion back into her bouquet, her heart aching with regret and shame. But before she could even take a breath of relief, a shadow moved in the corner of her eye. The old woman who had sold her the potion appeared, watching her from the back of the hall. Her eyes glinted dangerously, and she raised a finger, pointing straight at Claire. "Promises must be kept," the old woman whispered, her voice echoing like a haunting wind. Claire's heart stopped. She had made a deal with a dark force, and now it had come to collect. The old woman's shadow began to grow, stretching across the hall, threatening to consume everything. The old woman's shadow hovered for a moment, but instead of growing darker and more menacing, it faded into a whisper, almost as if she had never been there. Claire took a shaky breath, her heart pounding in her chest. She looked around, expecting something terrible to happen, but the hall slowly returned to its earlier energy as people gathered around Emily and James to offer their support. Emily, with her gentle grace, thanked everyone for being there and held tightly onto James's hand. Even though their words seemed to be crumbling, Emily stood firm. "We'll rebuild," she said with a quiet strength, her love for James shining through the chaos. Claire's hands were still trembling. The potion lay forgotten, tucked inside her bouquet, but her heart felt heavier than ever. She had come so close to destroying her best friend's happiness, but in that moment, watching Emily face disaster with such courage, Claire realized the true strength of love and loyalty. Slowly, Claire stepped forward, her eyes brimming with tears. "Emily," she whispered, her voice breaking. Emily turned to her, concern replacing the joy that had once lit up her face. "What is it?" Emily asked, her voice gentle and kind. Claire felt the weight of her jealousy and guilt pressing down on her. She couldn't hold back her tears any longer. I have to tell you something, Claire confessed, her voice shaking. I've been so jealous of you, and I almost did something unforgivable today. Emily's eyes widened, but she didn't pull away. Instead, she reached out and took Claire's hand. What do you mean? She asked softly, her concern growing. Claire swallowed hard, her tears spilling over. I was so envious of everything you had, your luck, your love, your happiness. I let that jealousy fill my heart, and I almost tried to ruin your special day. She held up the bouquet, the hidden portion now feeling like a weight she could hardly bear. I was going to make you lose your mind, but I couldn't do it. I'm so sorry, Emily. Emily's face remained calm as she listened. A tear rolled down her cheek, but she didn't let go of Claire's hand. Instead, she pulled her friend into a hug. Claire was shocked, her guilt pressing even harder against her chest. I can't believe it, Emily whispered, her voice trembling. But I also can't believe you told me the truth. That takes real courage, Claire. She stepped back and looked into her friend's eyes. I forgive you. Claire's eyes widened in disbelief. You forgive me? Even after everything? Emily nodded, a small, sad smile on her lips. You're my best friend. We've been through so much together, and I know how hard life has been for you. But jealousy can't win if we choose love and forgiveness. Emily took a deep breath. Promise me that we'll leave this behind and start over. Claire burst into tears, but this time, they were tears of relief. She nodded, her heart feeling lighter for the first time in years. I promise, she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. As the wedding guests gathered around Emily and James, offering their support, Claire felt a warmth she hadn't felt in a long time. It wasn't just Emily's forgiveness that healed her heart, it was the realization that love and friendship were worth more than envy or revenge. Together, Emily and Claire faced the uncertain future, not as rivals but as true friends. Claire knew there would be challenges ahead, but she also knew that this time, she would choose love over jealousy and kindness over envy. The wedding continued, but it was now a much simpler affair. The grand celebrations had calmed, and the energy shifted to something warmer and more intimate. Guests gathered around Emily and James, sharing heartfelt words of encouragement and support. The room buzzed with a spirit of togetherness, as if everyone had come together to uplift the couple in their time of need. Emily held James's hand tightly, whispering words of reassurance. He looked at her with so much love that it made Claire's heart ache, not from jealousy this time, but from admiration. She had almost destroyed this beautiful moment, but somehow, love and forgiveness had won. Claire quietly slipped to the side, needing a moment to herself. She found a quiet corner of the hall and sank into a chair, taking deep breaths. The weight of her actions still lingered, and she wondered if she would ever truly forgive herself. But as she sat there, a familiar voice interrupted her thoughts. Claire, Emily said, coming over and sitting beside her. Her wedding dress still sparkled, but there was a softness in her eyes that made Claire feel safe. You look like you're carrying the weight of the world. Claire looked down at her hands, twisting them nervously. I still can't believe you forgave me, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't deserve it. Emily reached over and took Claire's hand, holding it tightly. We all make mistakes, she said. But what matters is that we learn from them and grow. You chose to do the right thing in the end, and that's what counts. Tears welled up in Claire's eyes. I promise I'll be a better friend, she said, her voice shaking. I'll never let jealousy take over again. Emily gave her a small smile. I know you will, she said. And I'm glad you're still here with me. Just then, James approached, his expression gentle but curious. Everything okay? he asked, looking between the two friends. Emily nodded. Yes, she said, squeezing Claire's hand. Everything's going to be okay. James looked at Claire, and for a moment, she wondered if he knew the whole truth. But instead of anger or suspicion, there was understanding in his eyes. We've been through a lot today, he said. But as long as we have each other, we can handle anything. Claire felt a warmth she hadn't felt in years, as if something inside her had finally started to heal. She stood up, feeling stronger and more at peace. Thank you, she said, looking at both Emily and James, for giving me a second chance. James smiled, and Emily pulled her friend into another hug. The three of them stood there, wrapped in a moment of genuine connection. The shadows of the past were fading, replaced by a newfound light of love and hope. As the guests began to dance and celebrate the love between Emily and James, Claire felt a sense of belonging. She knew that life wouldn't always be easy, and there would be moments when envy might try to creep back into her heart. But she also knew that she had learned something important that day: love, forgiveness, and true friendship could conquer even the darkest feelings. And so, the night went on, filled with music, laughter, and the promise of new beginnings. The city of Everdale sparkled under the stars, and somewhere deep in Claire's heart, she knew that she had been given a second chance to shine, not by stealing someone else's light, but by finding her own. The evening air was filled with a gentle breeze, and the city of Everdale sparkled under the canopy of stars. Music from the wedding band drifted through the venue, and laughter rang out as guests danced and celebrated. Emily and James stood in the center of the hall, surrounded by people who loved and supported them. Their smiles, though touched with the uncertainty of the future, shone with a promise of hope and unwavering commitment. Claire stood off to the side, watching the scene with a bittersweet feeling in her heart. She still couldn't believe how close she had come to destroying everything. But as she watched Emily and James, she felt grateful for the chance to make things right. A sense of peace settled over her, one she hadn't felt in years. It was the peace that came from choosing love over envy and learning to let go of the darkness that had consumed her. As she watched, Emily turned and caught her eye, waving her over. Claire hesitated for a moment, but then, with a smile, she made her way to the happy couple. Emily reached out and took her hand, pulling her into the circle. Come on, Emily said, her eyes shining with genuine joy. You're a part of this, too. Claire felt her heart swell. The warmth and forgiveness in Emily's gesture brought tears to her eyes, and she found herself laughing through her emotions. The three of them, Emily, James, and Claire, joined the dance, surrounded by friends and family who cheered them on. The music was lively, and the rhythm of the celebration pulsed through the crowd, sweeping everyone into a moment of pure happiness. As Claire danced, she felt the weight of her past mistakes begin to lift. She knew she wasn't perfect and that her journey was far from over, but she was determined to be better. She would work to become the friend Emily deserved and the person she had always wanted to be. Just then, a familiar face appeared in the crowd. It was Daniel, the boy Claire had once tried to win over during their university days. He smiled at her warmly, as if the years had never put any distance between them. Claire, he said, his voice kind. It's been a while. Claire felt a blush rise in her cheeks. She hadn't spoken to Daniel in ages, and seeing him now brought back memories, some painful, some sweet. Hi, Daniel, she said, smiling shyly. I didn't know you'd be here. He chuckled, his eyes twinkling. I wouldn't miss Emily's wedding for the world, he said. Then, his expression softened as he looked at her. You seem different, in a good way. Claire's heart skipped a beat. She hadn't expected anyone to notice the change in her, least of all Daniel. I've learned a lot, she said, her voice sincere. And I'm trying to be better. Daniel nodded, his smile growing. That's all any of us can do, isn't it? He offered his hand. Would you like to dance? Claire felt a rush of emotions, but this time, it wasn't envy or bitterness. It was something new and pure, something she hadn't felt in a long time. With a smile, she took his hand, and together, they joined the celebration. The night unfolded with laughter, dancing, and the promise of fresh starts. Emily and James stood at the center of it all, a beacon of love and strength, while Claire danced with Daniel, feeling lighter and more hopeful than she had in years. The city of Everdale glittered around them, a witness to the beauty of second chances and the power of choosing love over darkness. And as the stars twinkled above, the story of Emily, Claire, and the lessons they learned continued to unfold, full of new adventures, unexpected friendships, and the hope of brighter days. The night was alive with the joy of the wedding, and for the first time in a long while, Claire felt as if she truly belonged. As she and Daniel danced together, she couldn't help but feel a spark of excitement she hadn't expected. His smile was genuine, his laugh infectious, and the way he looked at her made her heart flutter. Daniel led Claire through a spin, and they both laughed as the music picked up its tempo. "You've got some good moves," he teased, grinning at her. Claire laughed, feeling more carefree than she had in ages. "I've had plenty of practice from all the university dance nights," she replied, her eyes shining. "Though I don't think I was ever the best dancer." Daniel chuckled, shaking his head. "You were always fun to watch, though," he said, his voice softening. "And it's good to see that you haven't lost that spark." Claire felt her cheeks warm, and she looked down, a bit embarrassed. "I guess I'm still finding it," she admitted. "But I'm glad to have people around who remind me of who I can be." Daniel's eyes met hers, and for a moment, the world seemed to quiet around them. "Well, I'm glad to see you smiling," he said, his voice sincere. "You deserve to be happy, Claire." The warmth in his words filled her with hope, and she realized that perhaps new beginnings weren't as far away as they had seemed. She was surrounded by friends who believed in her, and maybe, just maybe, she could start to believe in herself, too. As the dance ended, Emily and James made their way through the crowd, greeting guests and sharing laughter with everyone. Emily's face lit up as she spotted Claire and Daniel together. She nudged James, whispering something that made him smile. Emily approached, her eyes full of warmth. "You two look like you're having fun," she said, her voice teasing. Claire felt her heart flutter with a mix of embarrassment and happiness. "We are," she replied, her smile genuine. "And it's all thanks to this beautiful wedding." James joined the conversation, his arm around Emily. "It's been a wild day, but I'm glad we all ended up here, together," he said, looking at Claire. "Emily told me everything, and I want you to know that I'm grateful for your honesty and bravery." Claire's eyes widened in surprise. She hadn't expected James to know about her earlier confession. But the kindness in his expression made her feel seen, not judged. "Thank you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I'm so sorry for what I almost did, but I'm determined to make things right." James nodded. "We all make mistakes," he said. "What matters is what we do afterward. And from what I can see, you're on the right path." Claire's heart swelled with gratitude. She had come so close to losing everything, but here she was, surrounded by love and support. It felt like a second chance, a new beginning. The night continued, full of laughter and dancing. Emily and James shared their first dance as husband and wife, and the guests cheered as they twirled under the lights. Claire watched her best friend, her heart full of pride and joy. Emily had faced so much but had come through with grace, love, and strength. Daniel leaned in close, his voice gentle. "Want to go for a walk?" he asked. "The city lights look beautiful tonight." Claire hesitated for a moment, then nodded, feeling a flutter of excitement. "I'd love to," she said. Hand in hand, they slipped out of the wedding hall and into the cool night air. The city of Everdale glittered around them, its streets glowing with life and possibilities. As they walked, Claire felt the past begin to slip away, replaced with the hope of something new. She didn't know what the future held, but she was ready to embrace it with an open heart. The night was filled with the promise of new stories yet to be written, friendships to be cherished, and a life waiting to be lived fully and beautifully.